Okay, so to finish up, I think we left off on Jessica, so let's go ahead and look at the one listed as good render. I should get the screen marker up too. Let's go and watch this. I think it's playing slow, so let it play all the way through, and then we will hopefully see it play back at real time. No, what's happened is I think it's came in at the wrong frame rate. So the render looks good, but the animation's a little slow there because of the frame rate. Let's see if this one's the right frame rate. Okay, so overall this one's actually looking really good. The only thing, I think you're doing a good job at having it lose energy. Not 100% sure that that's the right angle that would bounce off of here. I don't think it is. I think that would maybe be something I would tweak a little bit right there. I feel like that would hit there and kind of bounce off more this way, so maybe I would just put a flat surface there instead of that angled surface. Because it does feel like the angle would bounce off of a flat surface. And you get a little bit of curving there. Oh no, it goes through the wall. That's what's happening. So the biggest thing is how the ball kind of stops. So like if we were to get in there and sort of draw a dot on its spacing as it's traveling toward its final destination, I just feel like they're very. It's kind of like that, and then it just stops. So what I think you need instead is would probably be more like that. Like it's going to ease into that. And so you know how to adjust the tangents right now. If you look at your tangents in your graph editor, the direction that it's going probably just does that, right? And so at this point you'll need to instead just kind of arc it in really slowly where it kind of comes to a stop at that. Sorry, I'm trying to draw with the mouse, but you get the idea. Otherwise, this one's looking really good. It needs to ease in its final stop there. And I think it's working really well because it seems to get slower as it goes, but then it just stops. So that's the only thing I would really mention on that. Okay, Judy, let's see how yours turned out here. There we go. Okay. So at the very beginning, it seems to be traveling pretty good. The thing about it is like it doesn't seem to have a just overall my comment on it is it doesn't seem like it loses energy as it bounces off those objects. So it was imparted with some energy right here at the very beginning. And then what should happen is every time it hits one of these walls, it loses some of that energy to the wall, like that's transferred into the wall. And so it will slow down a little bit, right? And then eventually it'll just sort of settle to a stop because of friction on the floor. But instead, what happens is it feels like, it's hit here, and then maybe it loses a little bit there, but then when it hits this wall, it picks up a little bit more and sort of darts forward. And then it loses a little bit there, and then picks up some more there. See how it kind of speeds up, picks up some more there. And then it seems like it's sort of dwindling here, but then suddenly there was one, I think maybe it was this last one, where it feels like it picks up a little bit more energy again. So let's watch it all the way through again and see if you can see that. So picks up energy, picks up energy, picks up energy. There we go. So I think that I think it probably bounces way more times than it probably really would have. I like that you tried to put some squash and stretch in there. That's a nice little touch. I think it's the ball is really not rigged for it to look exactly right. So it looks like it gets a little smaller there instead of squashing. It just looks like it shrinks. Um, but for the most part, I think that was a good effort. The biggest thing is I just feel like it doesn't feel like it's losing energy at the right amount. I feel like at the amount of energy it would be losing for as many times as it hits, it would never make it that many bounces into the animation. So, Kane, I think it's this one. Okay. So first off, kudos on trying to do the the putter. It actually turned out pretty good, so that's cool. But not really grading on the modeling. But it's neat that you are considering that, and because we have that, you get this jump forward, so that's nice. I think that there's a chance that you would have had that even if you didn't have the putter, but it probably let you see that if it gets hit by an object there, it shouldn't ease out. It needs to sort of bounce forward, and you even have a little bit of a feels like a little bit of a pop up in the air, and so that looks good. Um, I feel like it needs to lose energy a little bit more gradually. So right here, it doesn't really feel like it's lost that much energy after this first hit. It feels like it's staying about that same amount of energy, but then it feels like it suddenly loses energy there. So I think it needs to hit here, but then take just maybe a frame or two longer to get to here, and then here just start dwindling to a stop the instant after it bounces off the wall. Right now it kind of eases in, starting probably right about here, and slows down. So you got to slow down on it. It just needs to be a little bit more gradual, and a little bit more sort of progressive as it goes along through the animation. The second hit looks really good. It kind of feels like it speeds up a little bit right there. And I know what you're trying to do is like it would speed up because it rolls down the hill, but I think it's a little much. I think it kind of speeds up immediately. Somebody else had, may have been Doug, had one of the animations that kind of did that too. Like as it started rolling down the hill, it sped up, and that's cool that you're realizing that. It just would take a little bit of time for that speed up to happen. So if we had an object here, and this is the same example I was showing him, and this is the ball on the edge of that object, it's going to fall off, right? It doesn't just immediately like rocket toward the ground. Because what's happening is gravity's always pulling on it. It's that slowly gravity starts to win out and it pulls it down. So it'll still ease out and it'll just start to accelerate. So what would happen is this first frame here, where it starts rolling down the hill, it probably wouldn't speed up there. It'd probably be going about the same. But by the time it got to the bottom of the hill, it would have sped up a little bit, right? So that bounce, that feels pretty good. I think you could even ease in how it stops there just a touch more. Um, it gets a little confusing because the camera and the ball stop at the exact same. Well, they don't really stop. It's kind of. It's like the ball seems like it's staying in the same spot in the frame. So it's giving me a little bit of a weird optical illusion there. Um, so I'm saying, but don't. That's just something to kind of keep in mind. It's not a big deal, and I think actually if you had shadows, we probably wouldn't even notice it. And then Putt in looks pretty good. I think it speeds up a little too fast right there. Maybe gradually speed up, and then so let it ease out of this pose here just a touch more as it picks up speed. These are very small nitpicky comments. Let me watch one more time. So you have a little bit of a bounce when the putter hits it each time, and I think this second bounce right there I think that one looks a little bit better than the first one. I think it's because the first one's a little too fast. Like it's just up in the air one frame and then back down. So give it a little bit of hang time. But that's a really nice little touch to it. So good work, um, Katie. Okay. Okay. So that angle looks okay. It could have been a little sharper, but it kind of looks like the ball's curving there a little bit. See, that's not really traveling a straight line. It kind of zigzags a little bit right through there. Um, and so that bounce looks nice. We kind of talked about this on a few other people's, especially considering it starts to curve in right there. Um, I think that because it's heading straight toward this surface, even though this area appears rounded, like really, this part's still flat, right? Like the area it's going to hit is still, for the most part, just a flat line, right? And so what it would happen is when it hits it, it would probably just bounce straight off and go this way. For it to hit it and kind of roll around it, I think that we would need something. Let's see if we can shape it like this. Right. Is it would have to hit kind of at an angle. So like if it is traveling this way, it would hit here and then go around it. But if it's traveling like this, I think it's just going to hit there and bounce off. And so that's just something to kind of take into consideration. It feels like it gets kind of sucked into the wall there because it's not hitting really at the right angle. Now, if it was going straight forward here, or even like this and it hit, I think it would roll around it a little bit. But straight forward, definitely. Like if you were somehow putting it from here and it went straight forward, it would do like that and hit the wall. So it feels to me like it's picks up a little bit of energy on this hit here when it hits that post. So you'll see it's traveling at one speed and that speeds up a little bit. And then the rest of it's feeling all right up until right about here, where it speeds up, turns a little bit, and drops in the hole. So like you want it to feel like it like it feels like it just gets a little bit of a boost of energy right there. So you see like it's moving very small increments, and then suddenly, boom, jumps forward, jumps forward. So like that makes it feel like it gets sort of sucked into the hole. So um, so yeah, you got a couple of angle issues, a couple of curving issues. You can kind of see some curving going on in this putt. I think that this is just a strange angle for that to hit. To pull that off, I mean, we could probably add another like shape that's similar and just alter it a little bit to where it would bounce off and roll around through that. And then it picks up the speed there. So let's see. So yeah. Let's give it a second here to catch up. So, oh, so that's the reason there. 360 megabytes. Let's just not even try it. Let's go File, Export, Options. Make sure we're set to H.264, current, and 24. Okay, and I'm just gonna put this one back in your folder. We'll call it smaller. And so this is just going to convert it and it'll convert it significantly to a smaller size. So right now almost, we're about almost a third of a gig. Right. So I know this is very exciting to watch, but it'll speed up here in a second. But what it should kick out is going to be probably, I'm guessing, smaller than a megabyte. And it's not going to look much different. Okay. It usually speeds up around the 20s, so. Which makes me go, what is this thing even for? If it's not to tell me accurately the percentage of the conversion. It may take it a little longer. It's a pretty big file. So when we make these, there it goes, 75, 80, 100. And so yeah, that's 85 kilobytes. Like that's the size of a picture you would download off of the internet. And so if we watch the, let me kill them both here. If we watch it, it's going to play much more smoothly. There we go. Okay. And so this is another one where I feel like it's picking up some energy. So we get this first hit. I'm not 100% sure that, like, I think somebody else had this. Maybe it's Courtney. It feels like you're wanting it to ricochet off that corner. And it feels like it's hitting a little bit to the side. So even if it was hitting there, I think it would still bounce. Like it would bounce off at an angle. So you need to have it hit directly on the corner if that's what you want. Maybe just slightly to one side. And then so it starts traveling backwards toward the hole. Like it looks like it's going to go right to the hole, and then it bends and goes to there, and then darts forward and sort of stops quickly. So I feel like one, you need to kind of address the angles that are bouncing. I think this angle is probably all right, but it seems like it kind of bends in its path as well. So my guess is you probably have too many keyframes in there. And some of those keyframes are slowing it down or warping it. But it also means you probably need to do a little bit more work in the graph editor and sort of use the motion trails to monitor it. Also, I want to watch it, and I want you to notice that, like, there's some spots where it feels like it picks up energy. So it feels like it kind of slows down as it gets close to here. Right? So like it's almost as it gets to this point, it's like it's traveling these big jumps here, right? And then as it gets close to it, the jumps get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's going to make it feel like it's slowing down. And then it comes back off there, and it kind of speeds up through the middle. Right, so those jumps get bigger again. And then eases in there, and then it kind of speeds up through there a lot. So like it bounces off here and kind of slows down almost to like it's going to stop. And then there's a giant speed up right through here. And then it eases in just a touch and stops. So the thing you need to think of is like how this will lose energy from each of them. So the spacing on it needs to be like progressively getting smaller, right? So if it's traveling this distance on frame one, then that, and this is going to be exaggerated on the numbers, like it's going to eventually get smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is just the distance the ball travels every frame, right? And then eventually it's just going to completely stop. And it's going to be like right on top of each other. And that's when the motion stops. And what's happening is we're losing energy as it continues to travel. It hits an object and loses some energy. It's rubbing the ground with friction and it loses energy. And so it's all these different areas where it loses energy that it's that we're going to see it start to slow down. Okay. Okay. I think same deal as Senya. Wait, I think yours plays a little bit more smoothly after the first playthrough. My bad. Let's try that again if I remember correctly. So I converted some, but then some of them didn't really need it as much. So I like that it gets bigger. I wish it didn't go to the ground when it got bigger, which I guess I'm kind of nitpicking it there. I'm like, that's unrealistic. Um, when it's obviously growing and like that's kind of funny and neat. Let me go ahead and open it up in QuickTime and see if it'll still play back smoothly in there because we can at least go through the frames in here. The answer appears to be maybe. It's a solid maybe. Or no. No. Let me go ahead and open it up in QuickTime and convert it really quick. So I may actually be exporting right on top of it. Is that what's happening? No, I'm getting an MOV of it. Okay, um, so yeah, there's the thing where it kind of blows through the floor, and I think just by raising it up in the air as it got bigger, I think we could have just sort of counter animated that, and it would have had a pretty neat effect. Um, I felt like you had it losing energy, but I'm not sure it's at the right rate. So it feels like it loses it mainly, if I'm not mistaken, from this bounce forward. You did a pretty good job though at calculating the angles, I think. But I believe that there's also a chance that there's a little bit of a curve that we need to look at, where it should be straight. I felt like it was curving a little bit. So let me should dart forward here any minute. There we go. 172 kilobytes instead of 162 megabytes. And there we go. No, I guess I'm wrong. So I'm just kind of looking at your spacing. So right here, your spacing is huge. Like it's just flying through here, right? And then it loses some energy there, right? And that's nice. But then it doesn't seem like it really loses as much energy through those three, or those two bounces, right? Or well, I guess three. One, two, three. And then it starts to slow down here. So I think what I would do is I would have this traveling just a touch slower. It also kind of feels like it slows down just a touch there because of the distance it travels in one frame, but that's just kind of, you had to probably do a subframe, or you probably were like initially editing the curve and it was gonna end up over there at that spacing, not where you needed it. So just kind of adjust your spacing to where it, kind of seems like it's traveling roughly the same distance to get to there. And then it loses energy there. But I would probably have this happen just a little slower, just a little bit, not a lot. And that way you can have more of a gradual loss of energy here, and it slows down a little bit, slows down a little bit more, and then scales up. It looks like it's going to go right into it, right? And then it scales up and just goes right over it. And so again, I think I would raise it up out of the ground, so just when you're looking at that, it doesn't look like it's stuck in the ground. And then I think it would be a pretty good piece at that point. So just a couple little things to address. Pinball with music. Let's go ahead and watch this one, just so I don't get distracted by the music. Okay. So overall, it's looking pretty good. Um, some of your framing here, it's like you can't really see it at the first until it catches up. So I play a little bit with that camera motion, but I think you got a neat you get this idea that it's falling, not bouncing, and so that's going to have a little bit of a different effect um, than if it were just a flat ground. So it's like gravity's pulling it down, right? And so I think it would hit there, and then right now you kind of have it sort of darting around it. I think it would hit there and have a little bit of a bounce to there. So just do like a little bit of a hop there and then roll on around. And I think that's the thing that's missing now is these like that's a nice hit, but I think it would hit and have a little bit of a hop. And so um, let's see if I hit here and play. So that's something there is like it kind of hits. That's not bad though that it hits and kind of rolls over to here. But I think that gravity is going to keep pulling it, and so it would kind of just sort of go at an angle in here. Right now it travels straight across and hits the wall and bounces down. It also feels like it kind of slows down there and then speeds back up right through there. So it slows down, speeds back up, and so I like this idea that it's like rolling, and maybe it arcs off here and kind of falls down here. But this is the one that I really think it needs a bounce there. It's to hit and bounce to there. And then it slows down right before it hits this. So it kind of slows down and arcs in. And then the flipper hits it and pops it up. Like that looks good. But the pop happens before the flipper has. So I mean, I think the flipper needs to jump forward. So like if it's just going to happen over like 2 frames, at this point the flipper art needs to be up here, like to knock it up a little bit more. And then kind of go straight up, but then gets sort of sucked into the wall, right? So you probably want to play with the arc on that, like have it. Right now it's going. That's terrible. Right now it's going up, and then like that. And so what you probably want to do is just sort of knock it up and like it a little bit more like an arc like that. So we get this like clean arcing all the way through. And then when it hits, maybe even have it like sort of bounce into the hole at that point. So let's see. I like it. It's kind of slow. It kind of darts out here and then just sort of stops its forward momentum there. So since we can see down and just go straight down. So since we can see down into the hole, I think you need it to feel like it starts to drop at the point that it rolls off this lip and then maybe hits the side and bounces around in there. So it's a really neat idea. I think you're dealing with a little bit of a different set of physics rules here. And they're not physics rules, it's just yours is in a different situation to where it should always be kind of falling down toward the bottom of the screen, and so that would indicate that there's one more force that's acting on this all the time, and so you made it a little bit harder on yourself than was necessary, but it's not that's not a bad thing if you can pull it off. So I feel like it needs a little bit more work on that feel of like that constant force pulling down. It's going to have a little bit of an instance where it's going to have a little bit more change in the speed up and speed down, where everybody else is just constantly slows down. yours is going to have opportunities to speed back up when it falls over short distances. So that's something to consider. It needs a little bit more polish to really feel like it's falling though, and uh, that's where your revisions and your cleanup should probably be addressed. Okay, who is this? This is Paul. Okay, let's watch it one more time. So I think that this is probably one of the ones that gets it pretty close on how that roll would work. It feels like it kind of slows down around the roll, like it would lose some energy, but it kind of slows down right through here, and then feels like maybe it speeds up a little bit right there, and then we lose the appropriate amount of energy there and there, and the fall into the hole feels pretty good too. I feel like it could lose just a little bit more after hitting this one, and then that way we get just sort of a slower trickle into it. So I played just a little bit more with that. Um, and I think the fall into the cup feels good, but I think it could speed up as it drops just a little bit. Like gravity starts pulling on a little. I mean, it's pulling on at the same amount, but it starts accelerating as it falls. Even if it's just like the first frame, it drops a very small amount. The second frame, it drops a little bit further. So overall, this one's looking pretty good. I think you could clean up your arc around here just a little bit. We're getting it blowing through the wall, and it I kind of wish it could just roll all the way from like point to point. Like this little flat area makes me think that it would bounce off a little bit. So I wish that was a little bit smoother. Maybe even just move that into the wall a little bit more, where it just kind of rolls right around. But otherwise, that one's looking pretty good. Okay, Paul, where are we at? Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. So this one needs a significant amount of work. Um, so you got the keyframe set of it hits at this wall, this wall, this wall, this wall, that wall, and then it stops here. Um, so here's the thing: is like I think there's three major things wrong with this. First is there doesn't really seem to be any attention at all paid to it in the graph editor about how these are going to hit this wall. So like it eases in here, and it even starts to curve right through there. So that means that like some other force would be pulling on it, right? But really, you would just be traveling, minding its own business, having no intentions of ever stopping until it comes in contact with the wall and bounces off this way. So right now, what you have is it's traveling through here, and then it kind of curves around here, and then it kind of curves around here, and then it goes into this corner and curves around here, right? And as it's doing that, it's actually slowing down at these points as well. It's like these areas are where it's like as it's getting closer to the wall, it starts to slow down, and then after it starts leaving the wall, it starts speeding back up again. So it's traveling fast through these areas, right? But it's slowing down at these points where it's going to come in contact with the wall. Okay, so that's what you have right now, and what I think you really need is, or what I know you really need, is it travels in this straight line. And when it comes in contact here, it changes directions, right? And so we're getting these like these paths that stuff is bouncing off, and I think it comes back to here. Is that right? And then it goes to here, bounces off, and just ends like here, right? So that's the first thing you need, is to make that feel like it's hitting and changing directions. Like, okay, so the second thing is it has no real. So we talked about the way it slows down as it gets close to these corners, and so it can't really do that, right? So we have it starting here, and we impart some energy on it right there, right? And so that is the only energy it's going to get throughout the rest of this animation. It gets this one knock, right? And so the distance it travels on your first frame from here to here or whatever should be the largest distance it ever travels, and it's going to travel that in one frame, right? And then all the way throughout all of the rest of this, it's going to slowly start traveling smaller and smaller distances, right? So this next jump may not be that much smaller, or may be almost the same size, right? But by the time it gets down here to the end, it's going to be traveling these really small distances. You know, like maybe here it's just traveling like this, you know, and then it starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And so it's that's the thing that's missing here, is like we impart some energy on it right here. Why, thanks, Apple. I'll hit quit. We impart an energy on it there, and then as it hits these things and as it continues to roll across the surface, it should lose energy and start to slow down, right? Every time it bounces off something, it'll lose a little bit into that object that it bounces off of, and it will start slowing down from there, right? And so yours doesn't really seem to do that. It seems to just kind of keep going, and it kind of picks up energy in between. Like as it travels from here to here, let's watch it. It travels very small gaps at first, right? So each frame is traveling a very small amount, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it starts to get smaller again right before it gets to the wall. Okay. And then by this point, it's just barely traveling these really small gaps. Okay, so that makes it feel like it's slowing down before it gets to the corners, and that's just not. I mean, that's not what we would see in real life. Like the ball can't force itself to slow down before it gets to the object, even if it knew the object was coming. It has no physical power of itself. It also can't make itself speed up. It's not an autonomous being. It's just a ball that we hit, right? So once we have, like, and so that's one of the reasons this feels weird, is because it feels like it's a living creature. It feels like it's like making its own decisions to speed up and bounce around, and it doesn't feel like a ball bouncing around in a scene. So hopefully that makes sense. All of this is just stuff that you would achieve in the graph editor. Just sort of making sure your timing is right. You can adjust keyframes there, or you can just adjust your graph to make it slow down, right? So right now, what your graph looks like as you travel between two curves is, you have a keyframe here, a keyframe here, and a keyframe here. Yours is easing out of here and then speeding up through the middle, and then easing in here, right? And then it eases out of this one, speeds up through the middle, and eases in here. And what we need for most of this is just the, let's draw that with a different color. So it's pretty much just a straight line that goes from there to there. Okay, now that's in this instance. I don't want you to assume that means everything you ever animate needs to go in straight lines. In this case, like, that's what's kind of happening, is it's hitting this and changing direction sharply. Okay, so let's move on to Rebecca. Let's see, we're at 39 minutes. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop and start a third video for these last 5 pieces. So talk to you soon. Bye.